speak, just make sure that you unmute yourself. All right, cool. So the title of today's call is Succeeding Through Adversity. And, when I created this schedule for these calls, I really tried to get into the mind of a branch manager in terms of what is going on in their world at this exact time and how can we bring a call to them that's really specifically designed to uplift them in this exact moment. So I know heading into this first week of June and coming off a month of May where one of two things happen. One, you either surprise yourself and a lot of really good positive things happen, or two, you feel like you got hit with a trash truck head on. So either way, no matter where you are, this call is just designed to give you that extra push, that extra perspective, that extra tips here and there to really focus forward. Because the reality is that we still have 3 months left of the summer. June, July, and August, and then your personal sales still continue to count in September. So we know from a leadership standpoint that May is not always the best month for you. Of course, when we are setting you up for success, we want to focus on having big goals for May and creating those exciting actions that create great results. But we also know that not everyone's results come immediately. Yes, there are some offices where you're looking at the reports and you're like, how the heck are they doing this? And you're like, I'm doing all the same things, but my numbers just aren't there. And I think I made a comment last week in regards to Miranda McAllister, who's a senior branch down in the Eastern region. And her and I were talking and she was like, I'm planting all the seeds, but the flowers aren't coming. For some people, the flowers don't come until June. And I think about my second branch summer. I had a pretty good May. My May for my second branch summer was $25K, and the majority of those sales came in the last 2 weeks of May. I'm not sharing this to talk about my success in May, but my biggest competitor that summer was this guy named Brandon Anderson. Brandon ended up kicking my butt for SC2, and he ended up finishing the summer at 147. So he was very, very close to me at 153. Brandon had an abysmal May, and such an abysmal May that his actual May taps were negative 1,700. So he hired one person, that person went out and sold a signature set, and then it was returned. And he still managed to create a $147,000 May and finish number 2 in the Northeast region. So it does not matter where you are. I can almost guarantee that you did not have as crappy of a May as Brandon Anderson did. So what that means is that you still have so much time ahead of you to really turn things around, which is very exciting. And I was talking to a branch manager yesterday on one of our coaching calls, and, she has definitely been battling some major adversity. And, she was deciding on whether or not to take action today or kind of lick her wounds. And I mentioned to her, I'm like, listen, the version of you in August is counting on the version of you right now to make the right decisions. How do you want to finish out this summer? Like, I want you to literally think about yourself in August. And do you want to be bitter and upset and pissed off? Or do you want to be like, I gave it my all and I'm so proud of myself? Because at the end of the day, as you probably noticed, branch is not about the CPO. Yes, we're competitive. Yes, we want to see our names on the reports. But what this experience is doing for you as a human being is so valuable. The skills that you're learning from a communication standpoint, the ability to interview people. When you go out and you start interviewing at major corporations, like, I'm telling you, you will stand so far above your peers. When I left Cutco, many of you know my story and I'm not going to dive into it, but when I had gotten this position at this IT recruiting company, I was one of the quickest people promoted. So they actually allowed me to start helping out with interviews. And so here I was in corporate America interviewing college graduates who had had internships, who had resumes that were, somewhat put together. And I was amazed by these 22, 23-year-olds who were interviewing for like legitimate salaried positions and their lack of ability to interview. And it made me in that moment so grateful for my experience in Vector, because I knew that everyone that's had this experience of going through being a branch manager will seriously set themselves apart when they go to interview for their first position. So, that's my two cents here on this particular topic. I'm really excited to let John Kane kind of take the reins in the beginning, and then Nicole Nisbet, who's a 3-time branch manager, will follow up the end of the call with a really great Q&A with her experience, and it'll be really awesome. As always, the chat feature is an amazing feature to use when you hear a nugget, when you hear something that you're like, wow, that was awesome. It keeps everybody engaged, and it also just gives the speaker themselves some kudos, makes them feel really good. So if you hear something great, don't be afraid to use the chat feature just like I did, saying nugget or quoting the actual phrase that whoever said it did. And then the final thing I want to say before we jump in here is that we have open office hours tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. If you haven't jumped on them yet, I definitely recommend doing that. It's a great opportunity to learn from your peers, because even if you don't get direct coaching, you can sit on there and listen to what other people are going through and hear how we're working through those things. So last week, I think we had like 11 or 12 people jump on. It was our biggest office hours yet. So definitely make sure that you utilize that if you have specific things that you want to cover. Without further ado, I want to go ahead and turn the call over to John Kane. So for those of you that don't know John Kane, you should definitely get to know John Kane. He is the heart and soul of Vector Marketing. He's my boss, and I am so incredibly grateful that I get to work with him every single day. He is the kind of person who, when he walks into the room, everybody knows him. Or not everybody knows him, but everyone knows his presence, because he is just someone who exudes positivity, who exudes heart. And I've learned so much in the last year and a half of working with him just about how to put people first and how to really bring out the best in people. So he kind of came in clutch for me last minute saying, hey, I'll help you out with this call. I was a little bit overwhelmed, to be totally honest. A lot of things are going on right now in the month of June. So John was someone who stepped up to the plate and said, I'm going to help you out with this and help you succeed through adversity, because you can't always do these things alone. So John, I want to bring you onto the call, and I want to, give you the chance to get us started here.
Shelby, thank you very much for the kind words. It's amazing even after being in the business for 30 years, when someone has something kind to say to you, it still really feels good. And it reminds me that, there's so many times in our life and our business when we're in such a hurry or we've got a lot going on, and it's easy to forget to be kind when you have a lot going on. And I really think that one of the things I learned from Vector early on was to really respect people who always took a moment or took the time to say hello or check in or say something nice. And I just really want to encourage you, on your journey, that there are many times where you can pause in the midst of the chaos and the intensity of what you're doing, and just simply thank somebody or say something nice. So it still feels good to me. And Shelby, I will say that I have been so grateful that you decided to make the decision to come back at Vector and bring a passion and a mission to support people on this journey. It's an area of the business that's needed leadership, attention, and support in a way, and you're truly pioneering a new way and a new way of support. And it's great to be a part of it. I think I mentioned to you yesterday that on our call Friday, I had one more thing I wanted to ask you. And I wanted to ask you, hey, when could I get back on a branch call? Would you have me on again? Because I really loved being on last year. And it just turned out, serendipity, it just turned out that there was an opportunity to step in today. So I just want to say to everyone on the call, I don't know many of you, but what I do know about you, if you're on this call, is that you have set yourself apart from what's normal or what's average. And I have a deep belief, if you've heard me speak before, I say something very common, which is that you can't judge character, you can't judge talent, and you can't judge growth in a CPO number. And what is very common is that there are people that are growing massively, learning a ton, experiencing great things, and it may not show up on a report at the end of the week. And I want to encourage you that my talk today is not going to be about how to sell more knives. The truth of it is that I was a very average sales rep, but I really loved having a team. And there were some things that I think that really helped me early in my career and still today when things got a little tough or a little challenging. And I think it's really possible that you might just be in a great place right now and you might not be feeling challenged. But there's a chance that someone on your team is, or that someone that you're working with may be. So as you listen to some of these points today, you may not just want to think about it from the perspective of, this is me talking to you, maybe I am. You may want to think of it from the perspective of you as a leader, thinking about it possibly as a key staff topic, thinking about it as a talk at a meeting. Maybe there's some points you can incorporate into your wind-up. First, I want to say that I've mostly had a blessed life. I've a lot of really good things happen to me in life. But like everybody, by the time you're almost 50 years old, you've had a few valleys. And I will simply share that you don't have to be 50 to have lived in the valley for a little bit. We all have highs and lows. And I think there's some perspective I can give that may be helpful, and there may be some things you can relate to or connect to. But I am very grateful to be here with you today, and I'm grateful that you've made a decision to do something powerful for yourself. You know, I have no idea whether, you know, it's generally not someone's intention when they join Vector that they're going to sell knives for the rest of their life. And I think that's okay. We certainly welcome people who stay and join. And if you like who you're becoming and you like the way you're growing, hey, we'd love to have you for a long time. But even more importantly, what we're so passionate about is the fact that out in the world are so many people who have this training, this background, this pedigree, if you will, this badge of honor to have taken this position and to do something extraordinary. And once you're a branch manager, it doesn't, you know, there's no quotation mark after that about what you sold. If you've done this, you've done this. Take a lot of pride in that and feel really good about it. Competition's fun. Contests are fun. Push weeks are fun. I'm all down for that. But I don't think it's the most important thing. So I want to share some perspectives, and I might be a little all over the place here. It might seem a little scattered, but I'm simply sharing insights. One of the first insights that I want to share with you is that a belief that I have, an experience that I have, and this is something that Brother James, one of our Cutco alumni who's a musician, shares. He shares that it's really impossible to be in fear and stress when you're grateful. And so I know that there are many days when I wake up where I look at my schedule, I look at what's ahead of me, and I feel overwhelmed. I feel overwhelmed at what's ahead of me, even today, many years in Vector. And it's maybe different things that are on your list. But I take a lot of a comfort if I can open up my journal or get out a piece of scrap paper and simply begin my day with a little bit of several thoughts around what is going well, what am I proud of, what do I like, who do I love, what are some of the good things in my life. Grounding and getting anchored in what's positive is such a powerful way to root down into the day. You know, you may not have time to go to the gym for 90 minutes, but you can take a 10-minute walk. You may not feel like you can, you know, cook a gourmet healthy meal for yourself, but you can eat an apple instead of a bag of chips. You know, there's little decisions that you can make that can have you feeling good. And one of the things I learned is that, you know, is that little decisions that help you feel good help you in times of challenge, stress, and adversity. And so, you know, there are many times during the day as a manager where I would leave my office and walk around the building. I would just take a 2 or 3 minute walk to kind of clear my head and get outside. I don't know if you've experienced it yet, but sometimes you can get in your office in the morning. And I remember there were times where I got in there at 7 a.m. and I hadn't left the building till 9 o'clock at night. Then I'd go to Perkins and eat 3 plates of nachos. Not helpful, you know, but, you know, the late night eating thing. So Perkins is a little restaurant that was right next to my office. I don't even know if they have them anymore. But the point is, I think being in gratitude and knowing and focusing on something good is a good way to start. I mentioned part of part 2, which is doing little things to take care of yourself that you can feel like you won the day before you gave your whole day to everybody else. And there are many times, just this morning, I'm in a meeting up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and I'm meeting with Steve Porzik, our director of marketing. We have a pretty intense day of conversation today ahead. We just went out for a walk and just did a quick 2-mile walk. It was a little, I don't know how long it took, but we did a little walk. And I said, man, it just feels really good to have gotten that in. Again, you may not have time to be training for an Ironman right now, but that doesn't matter. You can take a walk, a 10-minute nap, do some little things. Those things will strengthen you when adversity comes. Another thing I want to share with you that I'm still working on is the idea of responding, not reacting. You know, it's inevitable in a business and in a life where you put yourself in the center of the wheel and open yourself up to the world, recruiting, training, people. You literally put yourself in the center where there are tons of things happening all the time. And it's so easy to find yourself in a mode where when something happens, you very quickly react to that. One of the simple thoughts and simple things that have helped is, you know, a lot of times when people ask me a question or come at me with something or something's happening, Shelby will tell you that I probably do this when we talk. Sometimes she'll come at me with a question. I'll say, hey, give me a minute to think about that. I'm processing that. Wow, that's something interesting. I need some time to think about that. There are ways when things start heating up or things get intense to give yourself just a little mini break or a little mini pause so that you can go from being reactionary to responsive. And the goal always when things are challenging is to be responsive and not reactionary. The fact is that, you know, I find this at home. I'm married for 17 years on Saturday, and we have 3 children. And there are times when I lose my patience and lose my temper with the kids. Usually it's because I'm tired and I'm feeling a little stressed. And what I've learned is that, you know, if I can just pause and take 2 or 3 breaths and think about what I'm going to say, usually what happens is when things are challenging, I don't escalate them. So one of the tips is if you're feeling challenged or overwhelmed, take a pause so you don't escalate the situation and make it worse. Because if you're constantly reacting, people also notice that. You know, I know that sometimes in our office, Shelby, there are days where I've been on the road and I'll come in and there'll be 7 or 8 people who want a minute just to talk about something. And, you know, frankly, that can feel a little overwhelming sometimes. But if I reacted by saying, you know, I've been super busy, I can't be with you, you know, like it wouldn't be a good deal. It wouldn't be a good look. And it might be true that I'm feeling overwhelmed. But one of the things I've learned is I've learned how to kind of channel that and just say, hey, you know, one step at a time. That's one of my next points today, which is that the truth of the matter is that you can only do one thing at a time. You can only be with the person that you're in front of. You can only talk to the person that you're talking to. You can only run the interview that you're running, run the training that you're running. What I notice in so many people is that they get so far ahead of themselves. They'll sit on a Monday and they'll just get so worked up about maybe what's going to happen on Wednesday or Thursday. And one of the lessons that Vector has taught me and in somewhat life is that, you know, be where you are right now. You know, be here now. And it's really all that we have. You know, being on this call with you right now, you know, there's a lot of emails, there's things going on, there's things happening, but I can only be here right now. And I think when you give people your presence, that is a gift. And I think when people feel that they know you're busy, they know you've got a lot on your plate, when they feel like you're with them when you're with them, it's powerful. I always try to put my cell phone away when I'm talking to people. I always try to turn the notifications off when I'm with people, and so that it's not interrupted. And so in times when you're feeling challenged, one of the things that can be really grounding is just to have a positive conversation with someone. One of the things I would always try to do is I would encourage my best people to call me first in the morning. And I would tell them straight up, I talk to my best people every day first thing, and your time slot is 7:03 a.m. So call me between 7:03 and 7:04. I would give them a weird time, never on the dot. And I would say, call me at this time. I want to talk to you first. Let's strategize the day. I found if I talked to my best people first, that would put me in a good state. And then when I was talking with people that were challenged or challenging, and you know, there's sometimes both, I was in a better state of mind because I already had that positive bias of knowing that, some of my best people I had talked to already. Sometimes your best people need the attention. They need more attention. And you can kind of take it for granted just because they've had a couple good results or a good day or a good week. We can assume that they're doing well. The reality is that's rarely true. I generally take the approach when I'm working with my own team today or any team that most people need help all the time. And most people need my help. And sometimes a quick phone call, a quick text, a quick follow-up can make all the difference in averting things where things really escalate and get challenging. So some of these things I'm talking about this morning are about being proactive in your thoughts, your actions, and the way you treat yourself to de-escalate things or to have less adversity. The greatest adversity that I often have is with my own self when I'm struggling mentally or emotionally or physically to make the right decision. And one of the things that Vector has been so great in helping me with at a young age is that I remember my manager sharing this with me, and it's kind of a Vector cliche, but it was very simple. When faced with a tough decision, make the tougher decision. And so by choosing more difficult, choosing the tough path, choosing a harder working path, what I found is that the business got easier over time. And so what I found is that when people make a decision that's easier, that's when, things kind of build up and feel a lot of stress or a lot of pressure. The next point I want to really make is this point that Shelby kind of, alluded to earlier. No one can do this alone. It's impossible to succeed by yourself. We need people. We need the support of people. And that's one of the things I love about this Branch Impact group, the fact that you can show up as a community and support one another, not just on Facebook, but here live on the office hours. Such a powerful tool, and it's something we were lacking for a long time. And, it's amazing how the power of one person, Shelby in this case, to really just light a spark. I want you to be inspired by that, because the reality in your world is that you can be the spark that brings people together. One of the things I realized is that a lot of times my reps, they love being in the office. And so I would just invite them to come in after an interview in the evening or at the end of the day or in the morning when there was kind of time where I was doing other things. I would offer 5 and 10-minute workshops or 20-minute workshops on key topics. And I just kept inviting people to the office because I felt like if they were around me and around, people on the team, that would be a positive influence. And so those are a couple thoughts as far as being proactive. Let me just come up for air here because I have more to share. But I want to just ask all of you, is any of this landing? Is there anything in specific that you're connecting with? And if you'd want to offer some feedback or a thought, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, John, I want to just jump in here really quickly and say, I knew you were going to crush it. That's why you're on here today. But, just again, the perspective of what you're sharing with people and the idea. I love to feel like you've won the day before you give your day to everyone else, because it's so true in this business. It's such a people-oriented business that, one of the most beautiful things about it is that we elevate people to become leaders. But at the same time, being a leader is a very difficult position to be in because people want every part of you. And sometimes you forget that you need to keep yourself whole. And the ability to kind of just go out. It's like my favorite thing to do in the morning is to walk outside, go to Wawa, get myself a cup of coffee, and I'm outdoors for like even just 5 minutes before my first coaching call. It's really, really effective. So I love that. But anybody else on the call, well, if you want to jump in here and just share some gratitude or share some things that you've taken away from John so far, I'm going to give you guys a minute to do so.
I loved the comment about you have to pause so you can respond instead of reacting. I think that our days are so busy, and that's such an important reminder. And I could think of a couple times this summer where I might have been reacting instead of responding, and now being able to make a mental note not to do that and to pause is awesome. So thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Anyone else here?
I thought it was really cool that even in your position now, you're dealing with really high-level people, and that you still struggle with some of the same things, no matter where they are in the business, and that it's a constant thing, and you constantly have to reflect and look at how you can build up people around you while also building up yourself. I thought that was really cool.
Thanks, Nicole.
The first point you mentioned, it's impossible to be stressed when you're overwhelmed or overwhelmed when you're grateful. You know, whether it be like just writing down like a few positive things like on a notepad, or taking like 5 to 10 minutes just to like meditate, just to like think about what you're grateful for and like visualize the day. It's kind of like a habit I've gotten out of and something I really think I should start picking up again. But yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Michael.
Thanks.
Yeah, I actually want to jump off of that, Michael, because I think that's a really good point to bring up, is that, you know, I think in Vector, we spend so much time teaching people how to become leaders. And, you know, this is the one organization in the world where like 18-year-olds actually want to read books. I think about when I was in high school, I'd never read any of the books I was supposed to read. But when it came to Vector, I was like, give me all the books. And so we give these resources to people, and we encourage people to take charge and to do all this learning. But again, we're still, you know, young people who tend to get overwhelmed and forget all of the things that we've learned. We forget, you know, like what you're just saying, Michael, the fact that gratitude is a legitimate tool to use when trying to overcome overwhelm and frustration. And we know these things in theory, but we forget to put them into practice because we get so focused on the minutia of the day. And sometimes it's worth it to just take a step back for a second and say, okay, what do I know is going to help me right now? I know that gratitude is something that's going to get me out of this frustrated state. I know that I'm doing this for so many more reasons than just CPO. I know that comparing myself isn't healthy and my only competition is my own self. You know, all of these theories that we know. And so sometimes taking that step back and actually reminding yourself of the theories and putting them into practice is really valuable. So thank you for bringing that point up, Michael. All right, John, we got another like 10 minutes or so, and then we're going to jump over to Nikki here.
Cool. So I want to dig into beyond the proactive, and I want to talk about when you really get knocked down, you know, when you really get hit in life and in business, and there are many dynamics. So I'll just share a personal story. You know, a lot of my high school years and college years, I had a lot of fun, and I'm not sure I had a lot of personal adversity, not much. I hadn't really lost anybody in my life, and I dated the same girl, my high school sweetheart, all through high school and through college, and got, you know, decided I got a job as a third grade teacher, but in the end I decided to open up a district office because my college territory opened up and all my friends were still there, and I thought it'd be really cool to hang out with them after I graduated. So it wasn't really, my decision to stay with Vector as a DM was more of like a social move than a career move. And I got to like a 5th year of college type of deal. That was my thought. So I had a close friend pass away that year. It was the first bit of adversity. And I got this thing in my head that, well, you know, life's short. And I made a decision to get engaged. And I got engaged to a woman I dated a long time. And we got married really quickly, like March. In July and mid-June, in the middle of the summer, I learned that she was having an affair with her boss at work, who was 20 years older. And she left me 60 days after we got married, after all those years. And, you know, I can share with you that there are things in life and in business that really take the wind out of your sails, that really knock you down. And I really felt knocked down. And one of the reasons I love this company and I feel so strongly about it is that, you know, I had worked here and I thought, what's the Vector deal? And are all these leaders the real deal? And, you know, I knew people were positive, but I knew we were selling knives and they were making money. And I just, you know, the crazy thing is when Al DiLeonardo found out what happened, he got in a car and he drove to my office in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and took me out to dinner and bought me a book and just sat with me, and we cried together, and he just said, we're here for you. And, you know, I still get emotional, think about it. You know, in the end, there was a lot of blessings in that, but at the time it was brutal. And if you've ever had your heart broken, you know, that can be a tough thing. And the craziest thing is that we were sitting at this dinner and Al said, do you want me to stay over at your apartment tonight so you're not by yourself? I was like, dude, this is getting a little weird. I'm pretty sure you got to go home to your family. And, you know, I tell this story about it because it's when something really clicked in with me. And it was that at one of the darkest moments of my life, you know, I had family members that didn't come visit me. I had friends I know my whole life. And here, like, you know, Earl Kelly, who was the region manager now in Northeast, we were reps together. He would come up and pretend like he wanted to play video games. He would say, hey, I want to play video games with you, and I'll stay over, because he knew I was by myself and I was in a tough spot. So one of the things I want to share with you is that in my life, the blessing of these relationships I built at Vector helped me through a lot of adversity. And that happened to me at a young age. And I got to tell you, it wasn't easy. My AM stepped up, people stepped up. And, you know, in the end, now I'm married 17 years. I have 3 kids. I got my whole 20s to be single, which was pretty fun. I can tell you that. And, you know, what I want to share with you is that what seemed horrible is now something I look back on as one of my greatest blessings. And I want to remind you that when stuff happens, often they're either our best stories, our greatest victories. You know, you may have heard the cliche that you heal stronger in the broken places. And I was broken. And there will be times on your journey in life and in Vector where you'll get broken. And one of the reasons I'm still here is because I feel a lot of gratitude in my life in the Valley for the people that helped me, and I want to help a lot of other people. If you know me, you know my little catchphrase is keep helping people. When I get stuck and I get overwhelmed and I don't know what to do, I just look for someone to help. I look for someone to connect with. I look for someone to respond to. And I get off myself and I get on my purpose. It's so easy to get on myself. And I remember thinking, how could this happen to me? How could she leave me? I sold 500,000 last year. How could she leave me? You know, like, who cares, right? So, you know, it's one of these things where, like, my ego is so big as a 23-year-old that I thought, like, you know, I actually didn't pay attention to the relationship, and I learned that. So now in my marriage, I know how important it is to have quality time and quality conversation, and not to, you know, just make work the main thing. And so, you know, I share that lesson with you because I can tell you that anybody that's been around here a long time gets to know their story. What I've found is that they're usually people who've faced some extraordinary adversity at time, and they were supported. And one of the reasons they stay in Vector a long time is they want to help other people. You know, it's great celebrating when someone wins a silver cup, but it's also great knowing someone's story when they've been in the Valley and they dug themselves out of that. And that, again, that usually doesn't happen alone. So I share that story with you because I don't want anybody feeling bad for me. I'm 49. I was 25 when that happened. I'm more than recovered from that. But it's still a part of my life. And I'll tell you that these stories and these things that happened to you this summer, you'll look back at the end of the summer at what seemed horrible, and you'll be so proud of the way you overcame it. Or maybe you'll learn from what happened. And, you know, as these things happen to us, it's important not to judge things as good or bad. You know, one of the things I learned from Hal Elrod, one of our alumni, and I love this phrase, is when something happens, he takes a pause for 5 seconds and he simply says, if he can't change it, he simply says, can't change it, and moves on. When someone quits, when someone leaves training, leaves an interview, disappoints you, whatever happens, there's some things you can't change. But one of the things that you can influence is the amount of energy, love, and care that you bring to people. And I believe that attracts people to you, and it attracts the type of people to you that you want. And so my encouragement to you as a way of dealing with adversity is get grounded in what you love. You know, this happened to me and I was heartbroken, but one of the things I said to myself is, I love this place. I love these people. And this is a healthy place for me to be as I'm going through this tough time. And, I don't know. It's very possible that you could be dealing with something much more serious than a breakup. What I've learned is that you can't judge people's challenges. Their challenge might seem small to you, but it's their challenge, and everybody gets to feel the way they want to feel about their challenges. So I don't think we can judge that's a big deal or not a big deal. When you're working with your reps and they come to you with a challenge and they say, oh, I'm having this adversity, I'm having this tough time, and you might be like, oh, that's nothing. But it's not nothing to them. And I want to remind you that, like, a person that hangs up, I almost quit my first night because one of my best friend's moms hung up on me on the phone. I almost never made another phone call because I was scared to death. And when I called her, I'd been at her house a million times, and she's like, she just hung up on me. I'm like, this is John, Liz's friend. And it was like, she treated me like some type of a leper. And I was like devastated. And that happens to people. And, you know, we're so tough. We've made the phone calls. We've done the thing. We know the deal. We closed the sales. We think we dropped down 5 times. Yeah, but not everyone can do that right away. So having some grace and some compassion to realize that a no-show or a no sale can be a big deal. You know, just saying sometimes, I know how that feels and it's not easy. Hey, I appreciate how hard you're working to get better at this when the job's not simple. If this job were simple, everybody would, you know, be making 50%. But this job is for people that persevere. This job is for people that keep showing up. This job is for people that don't quit. And it's that way at every level. And you're right, Nicole, I got to tell you that there's sometimes, you know, you might not think it, but no one realizes that. But sometimes, like, you know, it's at every level, it's the same. Sales reps, branch managers, districts, region managers, owners of the company. It's human beings that all have challenges interacting and working together. And what I've learned is by, you know, bringing a lot of love, grace, and forgiveness to relationships, that's what causes them to grow. Trying to be a bully, a big shot, authoritative, the boss, that doesn't work. What works in our business, and I think what works in life, is when you can bring love, grace, and forgiveness to as part of your approach. That doesn't mean you need to be a pushover, okay? You're running a business. You need to have standards. You need to have expectations. You can do that with enthusiasm. But I think for me, those are 3 things that have really helped in adversity. I know I'm out of time. I'm not sure if I covered everything I was going to cover, but I'm happy to come back.
No, you did a great job, John. Thank you for all of that.
I love being with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what you just said reminded me of a conversation that I had during my, I think it was my fast start. And I had a very interesting experience with a very big misogynist who just totally ripped me down. And I remember calling he wasn't my manager at the time, but he was somebody who had kind of helped me because I started in like an awkward time where there really wasn't a manager that was helping me. And I remember calling him hysterically crying, and he just let me cry for a second and was like, listen, it's probably the last time it's ever going to happen to you. But he held that space for me. And I think that's something that we have a really unique opportunity to do as Vector managers is help people grow up. And in a way, not like condescending, like you need to grow up, but like in a way where it's like, let me help you and guide you and give you advice in the times that you really need that. But also let me hold space for you and give you some time to kind of get through it. So thank you for bringing that up as well. I want to transition into Nikki here because, you know, she's on this call for a reason. She is a 3-time branch manager, someone who, you know, when I think about badasses in our company, I think about Nicole Nisbet. She is the kind of person who, I remember our very first conversation I wrote on top. So I was like interviewing her back when I first started in this position. She was a top 30 branch manager in 2017. And so she was on my list of people to interview. And I remember listening to her and writing down notes and big letters on top of her interview sheet. I was like, this girl's awesome. And if I ever have an opportunity to like get her on stage to speak in front of branch managers, like I'm doing it. So Nikki, you've been on my radar since day one in terms of being a huge leader in our company, someone of a lot of influence and just, you know, who's done the thing. You know, you've showed up and you've worked hard and it seems like everything you touch turns to gold, but I know that's not the case because you battle a lot of adversity. And so I want to ask you the first question here. And we kind of talked about it a little bit in the beginning of the call, but you know, adversity defines us in one of 2 ways. It either turns us into a champion or it turns us into a quitter. Oftentimes when people face adversity, it comes in the form of unexpected challenges. In other words, your current reality is not reaching the expectations you set for yourself. You know, I think a lot about the first year branches who, when I talk to them, they're like, yeah, my goal is 400K and I'm going to recruit 250 people and May is going to be 80K. And I sit there and I smile and I'm like, you know, there's a part of me that wants to support them. The other part of me is like, let's maybe reevaluate. But I think where people face a lot of adversity is when they quickly realize that what they thought was going to happen is not the case. So given the fact that you have done branch now 3 times, you're in your 3rd branch, how do you maintain a level head and the champion mindset when things aren't going as planned?
Yeah, so I think it's funny because I definitely needed this call. I needed to hear you this morning. I needed to hear John this morning because, so much of what you guys said was just so spot on. And it just really comes from like you taking time out of your day for yourself and making sure that you feel good, because if you feel good, your people are going to feel good. I know one of the biggest tips that, my manager Celeste gave me was like, if you think it's weird, they think it's weird. If you think it's awesome, they think it's awesome. If you think it's sketchy, they think it's sketchy. So creating that expectation and having that enthusiasm, with your day-to-day activities can really just keep your level head, because if you perceive something as one thing, then they're going to perceive it as one thing. And I think that was one of the biggest tips that my manager Celeste also too. I mean, you got to think about your manager, and some of us had a really good experience with our manager. Some of us may have, found another manager that they really connected with. But for me, Celeste Nambo, my DM, was at first, she was the scariest person I'd ever met. And she was someone that I feared, and someone that, but I knew I wanted to be like her. And, she's probably 5 foot, this little Latina, and she's just this spitfire. And I'm 5'11", and, I've always had this kind of, chip on my shoulder that, I can do something. But when I saw her, I really knew that if that's what she could do, like, I wonder what I could do. Like, if she could own a room, I wonder if I could own a room. I wonder if I could, talk and motivate and inspire people. And you got to realize that at some point or another, you've had that realization with someone that has spoken to you or given a talk or done this or done that. And you got to realize that for these new kids that are coming in, you are that person. And, it's kind of crazy to, take a step back and be like, oh my gosh, you're right. Like, I am. But they're looking at you like you hung the moon. They are looking at you like, whatever you say is going to happen, So just taking that time to realize that for so many of these kids, like, you are the influence, you are the person, and, those expectations and those realities that you set, and little differences too. I know, like, my first, I had my first girl 10K fast starter this summer. And for me, I had always had this thought in my head that I could never get a girl to sell 10K because I've always felt I had this fear that, I wouldn't be able to coach a really sharp girl. I didn't know how to coach someone like Celeste had taught me, or, John Carpenter had taught me. But I just kind of knocked down that, negative belief. And I just locked arms with her. And we went to the finish line, and she, she ended up selling 10K, but it took a little bit more. It took a little bit more, coaching and really understanding her as a person. And, I personally took her on one of her demos with her dad, and I got to know her family. I got to know her, and to where her whole family was tied in with me and what we were doing. And so I think, just having a champion mindset is just realizing that, to others, you are the champion, and you are, whatever expectations you're setting is what, they're feeling. So just get excited and realize that, you can't hurt these people. Okay. You can only bring them up. So only bring them up. And I mean, of course you can, but you know what I mean? Like, just get excited and take them to the finish line, lock arms with them, and get to know them as people, because, that's what a manager did for you. So I think that would, those couple of things would be my biggest.
Yeah, that's really great, Nicole. And I think it's also important to remind everybody that, again, we talk about the CPO, we talk about our goals from a CPO and recruiting standpoint. And, it's very, I find that a lot of people going branch don't hit their goals, and that's totally okay. They're no less of a human being for not hitting their goals. They're actually more of a human being for just taking on this challenge. And, what you described in regards to, being people's inspiration, I think that's more of a win than anything else. The fact that you could be someone's favorite boss, you could be someone's biggest supporter, you could be someone's greatest advocate. It's hard to imagine people living lives different than your own, But the reality is that there are people that are sitting in front of you who, I don't know what your life is like, if your parents are supportive or if you have both parents living together, if they're divorced, or I don't know the adversity that you face coming up to this point from a family standpoint, but there are people sitting in front of you who've never heard the words I love. There are people sitting in front of you who have never had someone ask them what their goal is, or never had someone tell them that they could amount to a lot. And so you being in this position of leadership is a real responsibility, but also something that as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, like, you really can't find it other than here. And so I think, in regards to getting down on yourself for the month of May, being like, I didn't hit my goals and I only recruited one person. But for that one person, you might have changed their life. And listen, maybe I will quit on you, but you have given people the opportunity to see a different side of the world. So just recognizing that you really have something great to be proud of, and realize that it doesn't all have to do with CPO. So thank you for that, Nicole. Next question here. So I know that you're a natural competitor. And last summer, your biggest competition happened to be your own twig, who you hired your first summer. And he was running an office literally like 20 minutes down the road from you. And he doubled your May sales. So I know that could have been really frustrating for you to see that. How did you turn your frustration and comparison into motivation and momentum?
Yeah, so it's funny. The biggest thing that I've been working on now and still kind of relates to this is I was talking to Mike Lanzetta, who's one of my mentors, just a couple nights ago, because we all have that summer breakdown where we're like, and I definitely had one of those the other night, and he just reminded me that it's not permanent. The way I'm feeling right now, or the way I was feeling is not permanent. And I think that, that was like the biggest part of my call. I was like, whoa, you're so right. Like, why would I stay in this zone? I got to get out of that, and realize that it's not permanent, and that, a lot of what Aaron Lax and I was always really proud of him, especially in May, because I had produced him. And so I always felt good about the fact that he was doing it. Did it hurt a little bit? Yeah, it stung. Like seeing his name, 2 spots higher than me. Yeah, that was rough. But for the most part, I always felt good about it. And I think just coming from a place of, competition, run your own race. I think I kind of got too hung up in, beating him. Even though I was happy for him, I got too hung up in beating other people and beating this person and beating that person. It's like, why don't I just run my own race and see the best version of myself, the best I can do, the best I can do as a manager, the best recruiting I can do, the best, the most people I can impact. So I think for that reason, just realizing that it's not permanent and just getting excited about what I can do, and not worrying about someone else is really just the most important part, even for competitive people. And for me, that was really hard. Like I grew up with 4 brothers and, I was a 3-sport athlete. So, my dad and my mom just raised me to be competitive. We had to fight for food at the Nisbet house. So it was just more of, realizing that it's not permanent and getting excited about, what can you do for yourself and for your people and not worrying about others.
Awesome. And I think about competition and comparison, right? So comparison is kind of the ugly side of competition. It's the side where you start to think down upon yourself and you start to get into this negative spiral where you are looking at everybody else that's better than you and saying, you're thinking why you are less than. And then I think about competition, and I was a swimmer and I played water polo and I did a lot of different sports growing up. But when I was swimming, if somebody was beating me, I didn't spend my entire race thinking about how I was less than them. I just thought, kick faster, work harder. And that point being is that when you're a really good competitor, it means that you can look within yourself and identify areas that you can improve upon. And it's really having that growth mindset of like, all right, maybe this week I got my butt whooped, but that means next week I'll just train a little bit harder and I'll tweak some things here and there, and I'll utilize the resources that are available for me, and I'll compete once again. And I'll just focus on beating my week last week. And if that happens to put me at number 1, great. But, we think about swimming or running, like you have PRs for a reason, right? So it's just focusing on beating your own PR every single week. And so having that shift of mindset from getting out of the comparison mode and into the competition mode is really valuable, because comparison will drag you down faster than a sinking ship will. So, just remembering that. All right, Nicole, last question here, and then I want to open it up for any, final Q&A or just gratitude. So having branched 2 times and now on to your 3 times, you're no stranger to adversity. Do you have any actionable tips or things that you've done in the past or are currently doing now that have helped you shift out of a negative mindset and into a forward-focused, positive mindset?
So even last night, just taking some time for myself and kind of reflecting, Michael and Zetta gave me a couple really valuable questions that I'm working on answering, today. And I think just finding your purpose and realizing it all kind of flow from there. But just kind of sitting down and really realizing why you are here. So I can share those questions if y'all want. So the first one is, why does being a branch manager matter so much to me this year more than it did last year? So for me, it was my 3rd time, but why does it matter more to you, for this summer? Why does it matter? Right. The second question is, how is it benefiting me now? And how is it benefiting my future? Third question is, how is it benefiting those I care most about? So, like my little siblings, how, I was kind of thinking about that, how is them seeing me go to work every day and wake up at 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning, benefiting them, and then how is it benefiting the Vector world? So, me going 3-time branch, that definitely, helps. And then what about the work you're doing this summer gives you the highest sense of meaning, fulfillment, or purpose? And so he told me to hold the Superman pose for 2 minutes and answer those questions. And so I'm kind of working on that today. But I think this shift, I've started to really just dive deep and go back into, my personal growth, because sometimes, I tend to lose myself, and that is when I do get negative. That is when I do get down. And this morning I listened to, a podcast on the way. It just happened to be, the Ace Weekly, Andrew Evans podcast, and just listening to 20 minutes of this one girl's story of how to build an empire. I was like, oh my gosh, she was talking about how her leg got completely shattered, and that fitness was all she had. And one of the nuggets that I took away from that is that when you make something all about one thing and you lose it, or you stink at it, or you have a bad week, it kind of brings you all the way down. Whereas if you make your life about, personal growth and, different aspects of your life, whether it's working out, eating right, your friends, your family, and Cutco, when you spread it out, it makes it a little bit easier. So I think just having, being positive just comes from, yourself and, eating right, doing the right things, and I know John talked a lot about that. But connecting with your purpose. And I think that's one thing that I'm focusing on, this week, especially as we go into June, because I know I have the potential to run a high level office. And I know I have, the territory, and I know I have John Carpenter by my side, and Celeste Nambo, and Shelby, and, Joseph Koff, so many people that I've, talked to on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that are in your corner. So just keep those good people in your corner too. And, if anyone here, needs someone to talk to, I'm definitely available. Just hit me up on Facebook, or, get my phone number from Shelby. But just keeping people in your corner that'll keep you uplifted, I think that'll really help. But answering those questions and kind of finding your purpose is what I'm focusing on in the present.
I love it. Nicole, I actually added you into the Branch Impact page. I don't know if you've accepted the invitation, but if you could post those questions that way, it's just easy to be there. That would be really wonderful. I want to open it up to question and answers in just 1 minute here, but I want to mention something that kind of relates to what you were just talking about, Nicole. In regards to just kind of focusing forward on positive action. So back in January at the Eastern Region Conference, the year-end banquet, I gave a message to the AMs about what does it mean to, focus on the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is a 3-part series where every person who's trying to do something extraordinary goes through it. The first part is excitement. And many of you probably felt that excitement right before you opened up your office. Maybe your first couple of weeks, you were like, yes, I'm so excited. This is amazing. This is so cool. Like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. And the second stage that everybody goes through is resistance. And it's that stage where you're like, oh my God, why is nothing happening? Oh my God, is this the right decision? Oh my God, what am I doing? Oh my God. And it's panic. It's panic and it's uncertainty and it's really difficult. And the reason why we don't have 1,000,001 people walking around who've done extraordinary things is because that stage, that number 2 stage, that resistance is usually what kills people. It's usually what takes them out of the game. It's why so many startups fail. And it's why, people have these big hopes and dreams, but they don't achieve them. It's because, they can't get through that hard stuff, but everybody has to go through it. It's just the name of the game. And then the third stage is mastery. It's that stage where all of a sudden the clouds have lifted and you're like, wow, I'm doing this. I'm in momentum. Like this is actually happening. And, that second stage is a stage that's worth thinking about and getting to understand and getting to know, like, how do you work through it? But the biggest thing that I want to just encourage you to think about is a lot of people look at this stage as hitting a brick wall, right? It's like you're hitting that brick wall and you're continuously hitting it and you're like, I can't move through it. And I want to encourage you to think of it a little bit differently. I want you to think of it as a thick fog, right? So you can't see the other side, but with a thick fog, you can still take steps forward. You might trip along the way. There might be a tree that you didn't see that's right in front of you, but you can still move forward. You can still take action forward. And momentum is started by taking action. And those first couple of steps are really hard. It's like thinking about if you are, I think there's like a viral video that's going on right now in the vector universe of Evan Keller talking about this flywheel and how, and I don't really even know what a flywheel is, but the whole premise is the first couple times you're trying to get it to move, it's like really hard to push something. And it's really, really heavy and you're trying a lot and you're falling down and you're failing. But as you begin to get it to move around, it begins to pick up momentum. It begins to pick up speed. And all of a sudden, like, you're able to start running with it and it's getting a lot easier. And that's the idea of this thick fog. It's going to be difficult in the beginning, but that if you keep taking those steps forward, you will get to that sunshine and that space of mastery. So just remember that, that adversity is like a thick fog. It's not a brick wall. You can move through it. All right, last 3 minutes here. I want to let people jump on here, ask any questions, or just share some takeaways. Just like what John had asked previously, I would love to hear some takeaways from what Nicole said or even what John finished out with.
I have one.
Okay, great.
Yes, so I love the idea of drawing energy from your best people. Right now I have a pretty small team of about only 2 reps, but even just people like in my life who I really feel like love and support me, I don't reach out to those people as often as I should. And to hear from them in the morning before I start my day at work, whether it be my grandma or like my top rep, like that'd be really great.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Anyone else want to share a takeaway or two? Cool. Well, if there's no takeaways, we can go ahead and end the call. As you all know, this will be recorded. Nicole just posted the questions on the Branch ImPACT page. As you know, it was a smaller call this morning. I know there's a lot of SC ones happening, and it is the middle of the summer, so people are doing some things at 9 o'clock on Tuesday mornings. If you could encourage your division to watch this recording, that would be really awesome, because I think what John and Nicole brought to today's call deserves to be heard. So again, I'll post the recording within the next 3 or 4 hours, but thank you all for jumping on with us today. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and go crush it. Bye, guys.
Lovely. Thank you, John.
Bye, everybody. Wonderful to be with you. Thanks, y'all.
You're welcome.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.